The sun was bleeding into the trees. It was one of those evenings where the world feels like it's holding its breath. When the wind dies, the birds grow silent, and even the insects hesitate. The swamp glistened under the dying light, copper and black tangled in a web of cypress roots and glassy water. Nothing moved. Ethan Reyes adjusted the strap of his weather-worn pack, sweat dampening the back of his shirt despite the cooling air. He'd spent most of the day tracking herons along the eastern edge of Blackwater, a forgotten stretch of marshland that locals avoided after dark. It was the kind of place where stories start and never end, where things go missing and stay that way. He liked it here, not because it was safe, but because it was honest. The swamp didn't pretend. But that evening, something felt off. The silence wasn't peaceful. It pressed in around him like a slow, tightening grip. Even the frogs, loud all afternoon, had fallen quiet. He paused mid-step, one boot sunk ankle-deep in wet soil, and listened. Nothing, not even wind. Then, a sound, so faint he almost missed it, like a hiccup or a choke, muffled through trees and distance. Ethan straightened, turned his head, waited. Again, a raw, guttural cry, broken and strained. Not human, not bird, not even close. He dropped his bag without a second thought. The sun was nearly gone now, casting long, fractured shadows over the water. He moved fast but careful, pushing through reed beds and hanging moss, heart pounding louder than his boots. His flashlight stayed off. Instinct told him the moment light hit this place, it would scatter whatever was hiding inside. The cry came again, clearer this time, and closer. It wasn't the kind of sound you forget. It wasn't loud, but it carried weight. Pain, desperation. Ethan had heard animals in distress before, but this was different. He emerged through a thicket of river grass and saw her. At first, it didn't register, just a moving patch of fur in the mud, small, struggling, stuck, and sinking. A young bobcat, chest deep in thick black swamp muck, fighting with the last of her strength. Her front paws thrashed slowly, but her back legs were almost fully submerged. The more she moved, the faster she sank. Her face turned, wild but not feral, panicked, terrified. Ethan froze. The moment locked in his memory like a photograph. The amber eyes, wide and pleading. Mud crawling up her flanks like a second skin. Her fur matted, streaked with blood and water. She wasn't just trapped. She was dying. And alone. His first instinct should have been caution. Bobcats aren't pets. Even young ones bite deep. But instincts don't always win against eyes like that. Ethan looked around, saw no one, no ranger, no signs, no other sounds, no choice. He knew the mud in this part of the swamp. It wasn't normal mud. It sucked like quicksand, swallowed everything. A deer stuck here wouldn't last an hour. A cat like her? Maybe minutes. He knelt beside the edge, boots planted firm, and spoke softly. "I see you," he whispered. "I see you, and I'm coming." She didn't flinch. He unhooked the rope from his pack, looped it around his shoulders, and tied the other end to a knotted cypress root. Then he stepped into the water. The cold bit through his jeans instantly. The mud pulled hard, and with each step, he felt its grip tighten. But he kept going. 2 meters. Then 1. Every inch closer, she sank further. She was quiet now, exhausted. Only her eyes moved, locked on his. When he finally reached her, she didn't resist. She didn't growl or claw. She just stared, as if some part of her already knew he wasn't there to harm her. Ethan slid the rope beneath her chest. The mud fought back, thick and heavy, clinging to both of them like hands. His arms trembled from the effort. His boots were nearly lost twice. Still, he pulled. And when her body finally broke free, slick, cold, and limp, He nearly collapsed backward. He cradled her like a child. She didn't move. For a moment, he thought he was too late, that he'd arrived only to hold the end. But then, a breath. Shallow, sharp, and another. She was alive. Barely. Ethan turned and began dragging himself and the half-conscious creature through the reeds and muck, back towards the trail. Each step felt heavier than the last, but he didn't care. All he knew was this. He hadn't come here to save anything, but now he couldn't leave without her. The trail back felt longer than it should have. Ethan's breath came hard, fogging the air as he moved. The young bobcat lay motionless in his arms, her weight somehow both light and unbearable. Mud clung to her coat like a second skin, soaked into her whiskers, caked in her paws, plastered against her ribs where they rose and fell in slow, labored rhythm. Each step he took squelched through the wet earth, the water lapping just below his knees. Trees loomed around him like our silent witnesses, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. "She's not going to make it," he whispered once. Not as a declaration, just the truth, risened uninvited. But then her paw twitched, a small, weak flick, barely noticeable. He looked down. Her eyes were closed now, but she was still breathing, shallow, rattling, but breathing. That single movement lit a fire in him. This wasn't over. Not yet. Ethan picked up the pace. He broke through the last cluster of swamp willows and hit the trail. The rain began, soft at first, then steady. It slicked the mud already coating his jacket, washed faint streams of black from the bobcat's fur. She stirred once, let out a breath so faint it could have been mistaken for the wind. There was no signal, no cell coverage this deep. He knew where the old ranger shack was, about a mile west. A wooden cabin used for trail maintenance, long since locked up for the season. It was his only option. He adjusted his grip on her, one arm beneath her body, one shielding her from the rain. She didn't flinch, just stayed there, quiet, trusting, broken. The hike to the shack was torture. Every branch seemed to reach for him. Every root tried to trip him. The mud tried to steal his boots again and again, and all the while, the storm gathered behind him. By the time he reached the cabin, the sky was nearly black. He kicked at the old wooden door until it creaked open. Inside, silence, dust, and forgotten tools. No heat, no light. But it was shelter. He found a tarp in the corner, laid her down, grabbed an old cloth and a half-rusted canteen of rainwater from a wall shelf. Then, gently, slowly, he began to clean her. She didn't open her eyes, but she didn't resist. Each time the cloth passed over her flank, she let out a low, strained sigh. Her ribs were visible now beneath the layers of muck, each one sharp, fragile, almost translucent beneath her thin, soaking coat. One leg looked swollen. Her ears were torn. Her breath trembled. And still, she lived. He whispered to her as he worked. Not words exactly, just sound. Gentle murmurs like wind through reeds or the hush of trees after rain. Something ancient. Something safe. Outside, the storm howled. Inside, time slowed. Ethan didn't sleep. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. At some point she moved, just slightly. Her head turned toward him. Her eyes, though half closed, met his again for the first time since the rescue. And he saw something in them, not wild, not fearful, something else. Recognition. Dawn didn't rise. It leaked into the swamp, pale, gray and shivering. Outside the cabin, mist clung to the trees like a memory. The storm had passed, but the world it left behind felt hollow, as if nature itself had stepped back to wait. Inside, Ethan sat with his back against the wall, the bobcat curled on the tarp beside him, breathing in slow, shallow pulses. Her eyes had closed again some time after midnight, but her body was warmer now, just barely. The fever had broken. He hadn't slept. He hadn't moved, really. Only sat, listening to her breathe, watching her chest rise and fall with a rhythm so faint, he often held his own breath just to be sure it hadn't stopped. She was still alive, but it was the kind of alive that dangled on a wire. One gust, one slip, and she could fall. Ethan reached for the old walkie he'd found in a drawer earlier, its battery barely functional. He clicked it on and pressed the button. "Ranger Outpost 3. If you're out there, I need help. Injured Bobcat. Young female. Pulled her from the swamp last night." She's fading. Static. Then nothing. He tried again. This time a crackle. Then a voice, distant and clipped. "Copy that. What are the coordinates?" He gave them. They said it'd take time. The outpost was 2 hours out, maybe more. He hung up, looked down and froze. Her paw, the same one that had twitched in the mud, was now resting gently against the side of his boot. No strength behind it. No pressure, just contact. Like she was grounding herself. Like he was the only thing left in the world that felt real to her. His throat tightened. There were moments in life that arrive without sound. No thunder, no music, no bright light. Just a sudden, quiet shift inside you. Like a door opening to something you didn't know you'd kept locked. That paw on his boot was one of them. She was a wild thing, a predator. She didn't owe him her trust. She should have vanished into the trees or lashed out with teeth and claws. But she, instead, in the heart of the swamp, where the rules of survival are brutal and simple, she had chosen not to fight. She had chosen him. And in that moment, Ethan understood something that had only ever existed in theory before. This wasn't about saving her life. It was about what she had saved in him. He had spent most of his life tracking animals, photographing them, studying them, from a distance. The rule was simple. Never interfere. Observe. Document. Leave the wild as you found it. But what he'd found last night wasn't something he could leave. That small, dying creature had stared into him with the kind of gaze that left scars. Not physical one, but the kind that reshape your soul. He hadn't come out here looking for meaning, but somehow, meaning had found him. And now, he couldn't let go. The Rangers arrived at 9:04 a.m. Their boots echoed loudly across the wet ground, a jarring contrast to the hush of the swamp. One of them, Torres, was a field vet. The others carried gear, tranquilizers, crates, masks. Ethan stepped outside to meet them, arms folded, face unreadable. "She's in there," he said. "Still breathing." They went inside. A silence followed. Then quiet murmuring, the kind of voices you use in a hospital room when the patient's not conscious, but still listening. Torres emerged a few minutes later, gloves stained. "She's lucky," he said. "If you'd waited another hour..." He didn't finish the sentence. They brought out a soft crate. Padded, clean. One of the Rangers reached down to lift her, but she tensed, not violently, not with force, just a sudden, gentle shudder. Then she looked around. Her eyes scanned the humans, past them, over their shoulders, until they found him. Ethan. He stepped forward instinctively, hands out, palms up. And in that moment, something happened none of the Rangers expected. The Bobcat, bruised, broken, wild, made a sound, not a growl, not a hiss, a low, short chirp, a vocalization usually reserved for kittens calling their mother, a sound Ethan had only ever heard on recordings. She made it for him. The Ranger paused, looked back. "She just bonded with you." Ethan nodded, swallowing something heavy in his throat. I know. They helped her into the crate gently. She didn't resist. Her eyes stayed on him the entire time. Not afraid, not anxious. Just watching. Remembering. She knew he wasn't just the man who had pulled her from the swamp. He was the one who didn't look away. The one who stayed when the world didn't. They told him she'd be taken to the regional wildlife rehab center, that she'd need weeks of care, maybe months, that there was no guarantee she'd survive the internal trauma, that even if she did, she might never return to the wild. And Ethan understood all of that. But as he watched the jeep disappear between the trees, one thought sat with him, heavier than anything else. She hadn't died alone. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't want to live alone either. The facility wasn't much from the outside, a wire-fenced outpost built against the tree line, just west of Mill Creek. Not a hospital, not a zoo. It was a transitional space, a wilderness rehab unit meant for one thing, giving the broken a second chance, if nature allowed. They named her Case 419. No tag, no collar, no microchip, just 419 scribbled on a clipboard next to species, Lynx rufus, Bobcat, age, approximately 2 years, intake status, critical, she arrived unconscious, body temperature low, punctures on her rear legs, mud in her lungs, an eye infection beginning to form from swamp water exposure. The on-site vet gave her a 30% chance of survival, and even that felt generous. They cleaned her again, gave fluids, antibiotics, 4 drips taped across thin fur. She didn't respond. She didn't twitch. She just waited, body curled, eyes half closed, like something suspended between 2 worlds. And still, her chart remained open. Do not sedate further unless medically required. Unusually docile, possible shock state. But they were wrong. It wasn't shock. It was something else entirely. 3 days later, she opened her eyes. Not a flicker. Not a startled jolt. Just a slow, deliberate awakening, as if she had been waiting for something specific before returning to the world. The staff entered quietly. She didn't move, didn't growl, only turned her head, watched. Dr. Malik, the senior vet, muttered, "I've never seen this kind of calm in a wild bobcat." One of the junior interns, Morgan, tilted her head. "She's not calm, she's waiting." For what? No one answered, until the next morning, when Ethan showed up. He hadn't planned on coming back. Not so soon. But sleep hadn't come since she left. His thoughts kept circling the same image, her paw on his boot, the chirp, the eyes. He told himself it was curiosity, closure, that he just wanted to know. But he knew that was a lie. Something about her had gotten inside him, changed him. When he arrived at the gate, the intern raised an eyebrow. "Case 419?" she asked. He nodded. She called it in. Dr. Malik came out personally. "She's stable," he said. "Stronger than we expected. But she hasn't eaten much." "Why?" "We don't know. We've tried different meats, fluids, even scent triggers. She's alert, but distant." Ethan frowned. "Can I see her?" Malik paused. "She's wild. She might not recognize you." "I know." They walked him through a quiet corridor, past wire cages, recovery rooms, hushed monitors, and then a small enclosure, glass on one side, straw bedding, a low-hanging heat lamp in the corner. She lay beneath it, eyes closed. Then she opened them, saw him, and everything changed. She rose to her feet, unsteady but purposeful. No growl, no flinch, just stillness. Then movement. She walked to the glass, placed a paw against it. The staff froze. Ethan stepped closer, his own hand lifting almost involuntarily. For a moment, their hands, paw and palm, sat across from each other through the pain. And then the strangest thing happened. She chirped again. Same low, short call. Same exact sound as before. The intern's mouth opened slightly. Dr. Malik stepped forward. That's imprinting behavior. Emotional memory. She knows him, someone whispered. No one said anything for a long moment. From that day on, things changed. She began eating. Small pieces at first, rabbit meat soaked in warm broth. She responded to gentle sounds. She tracked movement in the hallway outside her window. And every time Ethan visited, whether for 5 minutes or an hour, her body relaxed. The staff stopped calling her 419. Morgan, the intern, started calling her Raya. It meant hope in an old dialect she'd learned as a child. No one objected. The name stuck. Over the next 2 weeks, Raya grew stronger. She began to walk, first in slow loops inside the enclosure, then out in the exercise yard under close watch. Her coat grew shinier. Her ribs became less visible. Her ears twitched to sound again. The distant buzz of insects, the rustling of leaves. Life was coming back. But so was something else. Her instincts. She started testing the limits, sniffing corners, stalking shadows, lunging at flickering birds beyond the fence. The staff cheered quietly. This was what they needed to see, the return of her wildness. But there was a problem. Raya no longer feared humans, or Ethan. She followed him from one end of the enclosure to the other. She let him kneel beside the glass, tilt his head, speak in soft tones. She watched his face like it was still the moon. She's imprinted on you, Dr. Malik said one evening. Emotionally, she thinks you're part of her survival. Maybe part of her. Is that bad? Ethan asked. Malik hesitated. Not if she stays in captivity, but if she's to return to the wild, we need her to let you go. Ethan nodded, but something inside him twisted, because deep down, he knew something they didn't. She didn't need him. She needed what he had become in that swamp. A reason to fight, a reason to trust, a reason to come back. The day came sooner than anyone expected. A month had passed since Ethan pulled the dying bobcat from the swamp. 4 weeks of hushed walks, soft feeding sessions, and quiet visits through glass. 4 weeks of healing, for her bones, for her trust, for something deeper neither of them could name. And then, one morning, Raya refused to eat. Not out of sickness, out of instinct. She was pacing again. Not nervously, intentionally. Her body moved with strength now. Her shoulders rolled beneath a thick, healthy coat. Her breath was quiet, but sure. Her eyes were sharper, her posture lighter. She had outgrown the cage. Morgan noticed it first. She's searching, she said, watching the cat circle the outer fence. Dr. Malik nodded slowly. She's ready. That same afternoon, they brought out the release forms. No collar, no tracking chip, no satellite leash. She's not an experiment, Malik told Ethan. She doesn't owe us her freedom. She earned it. But even so, something heavy hung in the air. Not dread, not fear. Something harder to say aloud. Loss. Ethan helped prepare the travel crate himself. It felt wrong somehow, packing her into a box just to say goodbye. But it was the safest way to get her back to the reserve near Blackwater, the only place she might still call home. He rode in the transport van, silent, one hand resting against the crate wall. She didn't cry. She didn't sleep. She just listened. Every bump, every turn, every subtle shift in his breathing. And when the van finally stopped, she stirred. Not with panic, not confusion, with awareness, as if she recognized the air. They carried the crate to the clearing where he had first heard her cry. The mud had hardened now, The floodwaters had receded, but the memory of that night, of her head sinking below the surface, of her eyes meeting his in the dark, still clung to the trees like smoke. She stepped out slowly. At first, the world seemed too large. Again, she blinked, sniffed the wind, her body low, ears alert. But then she took a step, and another. And then, she didn't look back, not right away. She walked 10 paces, 20. The trees swallowed her in light and shadow. But then, at the edge of the clearing, she paused, turned, and saw him. Ethan stood with hands in his pockets, face unreadable, not moving, not calling, just watching. It should have ended there, but it didn't, because for a second, no more than that, she walked back. Not all the way, not close, just enough to make the moment impossible to forget. She looked at him, and this time, she didn't chirp. She blinked once, slow and sure, the kind of blink animals give each other what they mean no harm, when they offer peace, trust, recognition. And then she turned again, and was gone. Ethan stood in the quiet for a long time. The swamp was loud now, birds calling, frogs chirping, leaves rustling in the morning breeze. Life had returned, but something inside him had shifted forever. He came here to witness nature. But what he witnessed was a kind of grace, the kind that can't be owned or explained, the kind that meets you in the dark, sinks into your arms, and leaves you changed. They say wild animals don't remember, that the bond between man and beast is always temporary, but I don't believe that anymore, because I saw something in her eyes that night, something I still carry. And if she remembers anything, it's that, once, in a world that wanted her gone, someone stayed.